Welcome, everybody. We're very excited to have Jane Wong with us here tonight. We always like to thank the Longview Library Foundation, the Friends of the Longview Library, and the LCT Foundation for bringing these writers out. Jane Wong's latest memoir, Meet Me Tonight, Atlantic City, is the winner of the PNBA Award in 2024, as well as the Washington State Book Award. Amazing memoir about growing up on the Jersey Shore in the 80s in her family's Chinese takeout restaurant, among many other things. Jane Wong is also a professor of creative writing at Western Washington University, and the author of 2 poetry collections. So welcome, Jane Wong.
Can you all hear me okay? I don't know if I should like be closer to the mic. Good, okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Austin. Thanks so much, Chris, also for like, and also Becky, every time. For just like welcoming me here in Longview. This kind of wonderful poetry shop earlier today. So that was such a joy. And I'm grateful to be here in this beautiful public library. I was telling everybody, that I'm definitely a public library kid who, spent like 6 hours, AKA free babysitting. To be honest, like I just dropped off and like, my parents disappeared. That's really how I found my love of writing was like reading voraciously as a child. I used to actually do this thing where I didn't like an ending for a book. I wrote an alternative ending and I slipped it into the library's copy. So in my child minds, they're still there. I know they're not, the public library told them, but like I was like, that's how it all began. So it's really special to be here at the Longview Public Library as well. And thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It's like a beautiful sunny day, so it just means a lot that you came for some poetry and some nonfiction, and I'm hoping that we can have some conversation also, set aside some time for us to chat after I read a little bit. So thanks so much for having me here. It's feel very welcome into this community space. I think I'm going to actually start by reading from the memoir, mostly because it's the most recent thing that's been on my mind. It's kind of a funny thing that I don't know if anybody has any roots in New Jersey here, but it's a far place from Washington. But whenever I, share this book with people from Jersey, they're always just like, why is Washington in here so much? And I was like, because I live in this space. So it is a book that's obviously like located in Atlantic City and on the Jersey Shore, but I've been out here in the Pacific Northwest since 2011. So in many ways, this is also a book about my new home here in Washington State. But I'm going to read a little section from this one chapter called A Cheat Sheet for Restaurant Babies. And yeah, I grew up in a Chinese American takeout restaurant in a strip mall on the Jersey Shore. And this book is about many things, but it begins in the space of, where I grew up in this like restaurant, and it's also a bit about my father's, gambling addiction, and how we went to Atlantic City often. It kind of goes into how basically the restaurant closed because of the debt that kind of relates to that. But I will say that I don't know if anybody's grown up or is part of a family business, but it's a very distinctive way to grow up because you're always there. Like, and you expect, it's like, it was my chore, right, to clean the shrimp. Like that I had to do like every day. I got dropped off. My bus stop was the strip mall. Embarrassing as a child. But anyhow, that restaurant, my little Chinese restaurant, is still a Chinese restaurant today. And every single time I go home to that strip mall, there's a new small child that kind of looks like me. And I'm always like staring at her to like, oh my God. And she's like on her iPad, it's just like, weirdo, like this woman staring at me. Anyway, long story. This chapter is a cheat sheet for restaurant babies. This is kind of to her, if you can imagine. It's in the second person, so it's like I'm trying to tell her about all the secrets I know about her and the restaurant. A cheat sheet for restaurant babies.
How to lob an egg into a parking lot. Wait until it's dark, settled in dark, not sunset dark, say 9 p.m. The sound of breaking is better when you can't see it happening. When your father isn't looking, go to the fridge and steal 2 eggs from the bottom of the carton stack and wrap them up in a small towel, folding the towel like you would a word on the cup. Sneak out through the back of the restaurant, mind the potholes, and circle around front to the parking lot. Unfold the towel and give your little brother 1 egg. When he says the egg is too cold and it smells rotten like unbrushed teeth, tell him to shut up. Ground your heels into the gravel, as you imagine baseball pitchers do to gain traction. Give all your anger over to the egg. Leave your hot breath. Hold up to the sky like an offering, a sacrifice, this careful thing that could grow into something else. Tell your brother there's nothing to be afraid of. Tell him to stop shaking. He is no pinky man. With your arms bent back at 45 degrees, hurl the egg high into the air, into an arch any city would welcome as a village. Hurl the egg, and do not think about anything. Not about how your father sloshes an aquarium of whiskey. Not about the growing piles of bills you'll have to translate into it. You have to give the egg all of it. You can open your eyes and close them. It won't matter since you won't see it land. But you'll hear it. You'll hear your brother squeal like a pig at mealtime. You will hear the splat, the corpuscular blob of a yolk spreading across the hood of a car. Poor car, you think. Poor stupid car. How to lock your brother in the meat freezer. Oh. There's another chair here. This is short. Alright, how to lock your brother in the meat freezer. Say the following with love and intention. You won't even last 5 minutes. It's 100 degrees outside. Mommy said you have to go get the spare ribs. Look, I can see my breath in here. I'll give you $5. Let's go to Alaska. You aren't afraid, are you? How to be in Alaska. You live on the other coast, the Jersey side, and the wildest thing you've ever seen was a moose eating potato chips at the beach. But in the leaching cold of February, you can escape anywhere. You can be transported to the opposite side of the country. To travel, you have to wait until closing time, around 11 p.m. when the parking lot empties and your mother begins shaking the ants out of the MSG bin. The ants scatter from their salt haven slowly, begrudgingly, like teenagers when the mall shuts down its lights. Pull on your boots and grab 2 brooms from the supply closet and run outside. Ask your brother where he likes to go. Alaska, he'll say, his arms high in the air as though Puffin would adopt him in a second. Earlier, at extra low 5 a.m., before he woke up, a snowplow's jaw pushed all the snow from the parking lot up against the street lamp. Take your brother's arm and give him a broom, bristles side up. Don't ruin this expedition, he'll say. I'll have to send you back to Jersey. As if Jersey was punishment enough. With the alien lights and the Alaskan sun, dig the end of the broom into the hard snow, amidst of ice, gravel, and car oil. Climb up the mountains, declaring coordinates along the way. At the top, sit with your little brother, your back against the street lamp. The bare warmth of electricity running through this conduit, this lifeline. Close your eyes, frost thickening along your lashes. Imagine what it feels like to be so far away from home, to leave this parking lot, this strip mall, this state, this way of life. Imagine traveling to places beyond Alaska, Hong Kong, Seoul, Cairo. Vow to leave Jersey the instant you graduate high school. Link your 2 pinky fingers together. Promise yourself you'll leave. As you fall asleep, surrounded by glaciers, your mother's sharp voice slicing through the ice, your brother declares everything he wants to see. Sand, yak, mud, ice, caribou, polar bear, volcano, rainbow fish, ants, ants, ants. How to pretend to fall asleep so your mother wakes you up. You've seen it on TV before, how children fall asleep in unlikely places and how parents look at them with pure wonder and affection. You've seen parents pick them up gently, kiss them, and tell them it's somewhere safer. Don't worry, you have an upper hand in falling asleep in unlikely places. You have the choices: dining booth, supply closet, under the sink if it's not leaking. Pretend to fall asleep. You have to become a floppy, waterlogged noodle. Leave a book or can of orange soda on your chest so that when it inevitably falls in fake sleep, your mother will hear it and be compelled to move over. Slow down your breathing, ever so slow. Become a hibernating bear, a sleeping alligator. Dream of all the ways your mother will find you, not hours later when she finally closes the restaurant and you fall into actual sleep, but when she's finished cutting strips of wonton, refilling the water pitcher, and carrying dirty dishes stacked tightly like the layers of a onion. Dream of the kiss on your cheek. Dream of the real feeling of her real arms wrapped around your back. Dream of her picking you up like a sack of sugar, a wet bleach rag, a suitcase she packed diligently many years ago in a country 7,186 miles away. Open that suitcase and see what you can find. I'll pause there, but as you can kind of tell, this is definitely a poet's memoir. I can get a little lyrical with my descriptions, but I think about the kind of way of growing up in a restaurant, how my mom was so busy, like I just never get her attention. But at the same time, there was a lot of freedom in the restaurant. I remember going down this strip mall, and every single store had like something special in there for me. My favorite was Burlington Coat Factory. I would go in there, take a book, and I got from the public library, and I would go, even if I go to the coats in circle, I would go under the coats right in the middle, and I would sit there and read. And then I shopping for coats. And I just, yeah, I was that girl that was like always in every store. It was so funny because like I went to every store, but the last store on the strip mall was the liquor store, and they would let me in because I'm a child, and I would just press my hands up to the glass and be like, let me in, I've gone to every store. Anyway, that's a funny way of growing up in this strip mall. But maybe I'll read a little bit of another little section from the memoir, but I just wanted to kind of open with that just to give you a sense of like, yeah, where I come from, like, you know, it's like to grow up that way. I'll read some poems from, this is from my second book, How to Not Be Afraid of Everything. And I have to be honest, I don't give you any actual advice about like managing fear, unfortunately. But it's a very personal book too. I actually wrote this book at the same time I was writing the memoir. So if anyone does read them, you'll notice that it's very similar language, and that's probably because I was writing it at the same time. Okay, I think I'm going to read this poem, and I have it kind of, there's only one, I brought one broadside with me, which is like a poem on a kind of really nice sheet of paper. It's from the Chicago Poetry Center. And I thought I had more, this is in my car, but it's, whoever wants to take that one, it's free, so, you know, but this one's called Lessons on Lessening, and this poem, I'm thinking actually a lot about how I wish I could learn more from my younger self. Like, I feel like my younger self has like a different sense of imagination and confidence that I grew up as an adult and teenager, just not more anxious about the world. So this is kind of about like how I feel like being like taught to be quiet or to not be yourself. When you're a kid, you are fully yourself because you're discovering who you are. Okay, lessons on lessening. I wake to the sounds of my neighbors upstairs as if they were golden. And maybe they are, all pins and love falling over. I lay against my floor only to feel that kind of affection. What I've learned is time they can't get up. You can't have what they have. And the eyes of a dead rat can't say anything. In Jersey, the sink breaks, and my mother keeps the bucket underneath to save water from laundry. A trickle of water is no joke. I've learned that. Neither is my father, wielding a knife in the starlight. I was taught that everything and everyone is self-made.
that you can make a window out of anything that you want. This is why for those insects, to see if they would come back to life. I began to see each day the swoosh of wings get up, the ants pouring out of the sink onto my arms and dish heavy water. My arms, branches, a swarm I didn't ask for. No one told me I have to let this be for life. To let myself be consumed for what I cannot control. I must return to my younger self, to wearing my life like people, leave in my own fate. Pretend not to know when the parents come to help. Let's mention this poem that I actually never read out loud, so I'm gonna read it, which is the one with the egg. It's so funny because I just read a poem or memoir, which is a passage about an egg. So it's kind of funny that there's eggs everywhere. But something about writers too. Oh, I do have obsessions. We don't see them until you realize like everything I write is about an egg. Anyway, the egg. Held to the nose, took me back to the field, where my mother held the chicken's neck down, with thin branch arms struck its neck, that whimpering bridge from brain to heart, with a cleaver as wide as a flooded river. Her reflection in the shine of it, her yolk swamped eyes, the speckled pluck of her brow, measuring the animal's past life. How it would stir in the mucus of the home, touch its beak to the cool crater, testing it. How my brother and I yearned to lick the sugar spackle of an Easter egg, but we're told no, not yet. Eggs, what else I got with the eggs? I'm sure I could find with everyone. Actually, I was thinking about reading this one poem that actually has an orange in it. I can't tell, I have a lot of like obsessions around food. It's called If. I don't even know what my own poems are sometimes. I go to the contents page. What is love not wrong? And I grew up in a family that was do not waste a single thing. And it's mostly because my parents grew up in the Chinese countryside with a lot of scarcity, a lot of hunger, and the generation before that was during the Great War, which meant that that generation, or grandparents' generation, went through starvation. And so by the time it got to my generation, I grew up in a restaurant, gluttony, right? So from hunger to gluttony. But even when there's so much food around, right, that I had to eat, to the degree in which, like, I realized, like, who am I eating for? And I think so many ancestors, adults who didn't have enough to eat. And so, there's this one story I have where my grandma, she's in Seattle, just partly why I live in Seattle, because all my mom's side, she lives in Seattle and also Jersey. My grandmother will go to the grocery store, and you know the grocery store, they'll bag up food that might be going wrong, but not as like perfect, and like they'll bag it up for $1. So all the vegetables are about to go, and she'll buy that. And I was like, pull up. I was like, Grandma, I can buy you a good orange. I'm a professor now. I can get you a good orange. She said, no. I need this because then nobody can eat it, and it was going to go to waste. So you eat the good orange. It just breaks my heart. So I've been thinking about it. This poem is about watching an orange decompose in the compost. What is love if not rot? I've been watching videos of rotting oranges on time lapse again. It's barely noticeable at first. The pores begin to grow, craters of no importance. 14 days, skin thins out, rice paper thin, wind thin, loneliness thin. At 15 days, spots bloom like a newborn galaxy in a bald buzzard, circling, a shadow returning the winter's wail. The skin covers in on itself, all chimney ash, all gray magma. The middle like touching a young organ, slobbering milk and mud, the pedestal of goldenrod door at 17 days. At 20 days, moss lingers up and through, continents growing along this orb, thickening at 22 days like cottonwood in the dryer, and fur, a sheepskin cloud like my mother,
an animal in her own right expanding. Now the color is plum yellow, more yellow, growing smaller and smaller by 25 days, collapsing upon itself like pearl fists. How I sleep at night, returning to heartbreak after heartbreak, fruit flies fluttering about like snow. What is holding it up still? What is keeping it here? How can I bear to watch it? How can I, liquefied by 45 days, wolfish in citrus murk, ever shrinking like every grandparent and ever held hands with? At 85 days, how to hold this slush of glittering leaves trapped in no liquid paper. So that's what I have at home. And sometimes I read the poem actually the video of the artist drawing the background. It's like really intense. I think I'm gonna read, okay, I'll read this one. Sometimes I write in my mother's voice. She's, every single book is kind of for her. I'm kind of obsessed with her, to be honest. I make a terrible joke that I'm the off-brand cereal version of her. Like, I'm not Cheerios, I'm like, you know, sweet circles or something. But I always want to be her so bad. So as a poet, I can actually write persona poems and I can pretend to be her. I can try to imagine what her life is like. And in this particular poem, she went to Burlington Coat Factory just down the way, and she had saved all her money from work at a restaurant to buy this coat. And some people may say like, well, you should have used that money to buy your kids like school supplies, or like, you know, why didn't you use it to pay some of the bills? But the thing is, my mom wanted that coat, and she deserved that coat, and she was going to get that coat. And my mom was married to a stranger at 19, arranged marriage. She had kids at 20, you know, she had me, and she was a kid of sorts, right? She was really young adult, and she wanted a coat, she got it. So this one's called I Put On My Fur Coat, and it's in her voice. So not Jane anymore, now I'm Jen. Okay, my mom. I put on my fur coat and leave a bit of ankle to show. I take off my shoes and make myself comfortable. I defrost a chicken and chew on the bone. In public, I smile as wide as I can, and everyone shields their eyes from my light. At night, I knock down nests off telephone poles. I feel no regret. I read spiders rising from underneath the floorboards, one by one. Hello, hello. Outside, the garden roars with lights. I want to shine as bright as the miner cap in the dirt, to glimmer as it washed in fish scale. Instead, I come along and sell my daughter garage. Then I take the garbage out at midnight. I move furniture away from the wall to find it in hide. I stand in the center and ask, will the animal here? Yeah, I just think of her as being this like bold. She is a very, if you ever get to meet her, I took her on tour, actually for this memoir, and she started to sign a book. Like, I made you made this book, so I made this book. So, is that any indication of like what kind of character she is? That's kind of it. Let's check the time a little bit. All right, I think at time for maybe I'll put a picture for the memoir and we can have some conversation. Maybe I'll read another poem too. I want to read a little bit from. I feel like I'm kind of coming back into a space where I'm revisiting this book after some time being away from it. It's took me 7 years to write this book, and so it's very odd to feel like, oh my gosh, like it's out there. It's a memoir, it's vulnerable, it is not hiding behind pretty metaphors and very surreal imagery. So we chatted about this during lunch dinner. It was like, oh, like what it means that strangers would be reading about your personal life or people you know, and I'm like, it's terrifying. There's no way to go about it. But I'm gonna read a little bit from this chapter called Canal Street. New York City, Canal Street is like where Chinatown is, it's like the main road. And, this chapter is a bit about how, and I told you a bit about my mother. She grew up very, very poor in the Chinese countryside in southern China and, didn't have them hair growing up. And so she lost all her teeth. She was having no teeth. And so we would go to Chinatown to get her fake teeth put in. And most of the dentists that we went to, or all of them, were unlicensed, because that's what we were for at the time. And, you know, you have to take care of the community that you need to take care of, even if it's, you know, a little stingy, I guess. But when I wanted to write this essay about this experience, I had to ask my mom a question. You can't tell, my mom is a very, very, put together, really, yeah, she's a force of nature, and to get her to admit, for her giving me permission that she doesn't have any real teeth, was really hard. She said, absolutely not, don't tell anybody. And I was like, oh, okay, I already wrote it. And working on it for years and years, but okay, it's okay. And then later, they asked her again, they said, like, okay, I know that this is very scary and very vulnerable, but this is such a love story. It's a love story between you and me and how you only took me with you to these appointments. As a small child, she said, you know, you took me so that I could watch over you. So if something bad happens, something dangerous happens, I would take care of you. And we did that because we love each other, and I was taking care of you. And she was like, okay, fine, just write, you can share the essay. And I was like, yes, I convinced my mom. So I'm gonna read a little bit from Root Canal Street, and then we can have a little bit of a conversation. And thanks again for just listening. It is very vulnerable to share all these personal things, but, okay, Root Canal Street. Also, you'll hear, when, the dental assistant calls out certain numbers for teeth that are, you know, 1, 3, you'll hear that. 1, 9, and 3, 0, first lower molars. Rich people have good teeth. Even the back molars, which are caves where bioluminescent animals live. If I open my mouth, you can practically see the glowing lure of a lanternfish with teeth so big it can't even close its mouth. A fellow classmate I'll call Kristen was a popular rich girl in my middle school and probably had polished molars like spotless case with sneakers. For my 8th grade graduation, my mother and I picked out a floral A-line sundress in the Lord Taylor. It was important to look rich even if you weren't. For this dress and all our dresses, my mother worked until our palms were bruised and cut from Lundy MSG bins and packing spare ribs at the restaurant. Or in later years, peppered with paper cuts and bouts of vertigo consorting mail at the post office. This is the dress my mother and I was getting me around, despite the fact that this dress was definitely not $20, the absolute max for clothes. The year was 1998, there was no red sticker, no coupon clip for no junk mail. Much, I protested, but you're so pretty in it. Now straighten your back and walk, she said, and so I stretched myself upward as if pulled by a string. But when I showed up in the same outfit as Kristen, I felt a pain as sides of my dress to snap themselves onto my cheeks. Sneers from Kristen, all her mean girls, Steve, through fence straight teeth, glowing like little white ghost babies. What a wannabe, what a loser, what a copycat, and then the worst. You, what's her name anyway? There it was, the familiar giggling of erasure, of buying fancy dresses without looking. I wanted to tell her that I saw the dress first, to brag about the geological thickness of my mother's palm, and how it better not mess with us. I wanted to shout, my name is Jane Wong. There's a kind of curse word there, so I'm not going to say it. Instead, I wore my oversized Gap hoodie over my dress and imagined cowering in the locker or being absorbed by the pure plaster of the hallway. Ultimately, Kristen and her friends chose private high school because our public school was not great. In other words, our school had too many immigrant and Black and brown teenagers for their liking. Rich people have teeth so white and smooth and straight, sometimes you want to knock those teeth right out and stuff them into your own mouth. I'm going to read a little bit of this section. 9, central incisor. On the morning of my high school graduation, my mother comes into my room with a set of 4 iron teeth in her open palm. They look like a row of seats in a theater. I'm sorry, she sighs, holding her aching jaw like a fish caught by a hook. I can't smile on any of the pictures today. I look up at her, her beauty radiating on the rising sun behind her. The mole above her left eye is a glowing planet not yet discovered. My mother is quite simply beautiful. At this point, she's in her late 30s. I told her not to worry. I won't smile in solidarity. The weekend following my graduation, we drive into New York City together. Through the cool fall of the Holland Tunnel and straight to the crowded neon-lit streets of Chinatown. We need to see the dentist and fix my mother's fake teeth. Her current row of implants has lasted 6 years. I can't tell if that's a good or a bad deal. Along Canal Street, the air is thick with the smell of fish breath and long fried donuts being dipped in steaming junk. Decked out in a pink silk wrap dress, giant tortoiseshell sunglasses, and perfectly curled hair, my mother's the last person you'll find following a sketchy 80-year-old grandma in a labyrinthine search for an unlicensed Chinatown dentist. Repeat, you must be put together at all times, especially when you have no insurance and no teeth to put together. All right, I'm gonna pause there because I feel like there's lots to chat about. So, yeah. Anybody have any questions or?
I'm just wondering if you publish a book of poetry in particular. Have you ever thought about putting these explanations in for some of the poems?
That's such a great, yeah, that's such a great question about like, you're right, every single poem has a little story for it. I would say that that's actually what inspired me to write my work, is that people come up to me after poetry and be like, well, that story you told before you read the poem, you should maybe elaborate on that. Maybe that's its own essay. And I was like, really? And so, yes, it feels so like special to me. And yeah, I've never thought of a way to incorporate it, but it's a brilliant idea. Sometimes, on the, I think it's the Academy of American Poets, that website, they have the poem and they'll have the about the poem. And so poets will usually record a little bit what was behind it, which I was lucky enough to do for that series. But yes, there's so many little stories behind every poem, and I always, you're right, it should be kind of like a, you know, like something that leads to something else to tell the story. I love that question. Yeah. The poems feel like portals to me. Like it's just like open the story is a way to open the door into the poem.
Well, I was thinking about your description, the one about the teeth. If you had not described your mother and given us that overview and that sense of who she was as an immigrant growing up and what, you know, how she saw the world, but I got a really clear picture from what you said, so that then when you read the poem, I could just imagine what she was like going down the street with her little girl.
Yeah, I really want to thank you for that. I really want to get a sense of her. You just describing what she was wearing, going to this unlicensed dentist, like that she was dressed up. She's always fully dressed up. My mom is works night shift. She's been working night shift at the yes for almost 30 years now. And she still to go to night shift is completely put together. And some people come to me, they'll be like, why bother? They'll say to her, why bother? Why are you so dressed up? And she's like, my work matters. Like, I'm proud of this job. I'm proud to be a postal clerk. I'm gonna dress like I'm proud to be a postal clerk. I love her attitude. She's definitely has an attitude about her that like I said, I try to be like, but I'm too nerdy. Like my mom has joked around all the time. She was like, Jane, when I was in high school, she was like, why aren't you going to parties? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm doing my homework. And she was like, you need to go to parties. Because that's how you make friends. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it's kind of a funny thing that it's like, she was almost the opposite of a stereotype of an Asian American, like, hyper mom. She was not strict. She was not
And it's, when people meet her, I think it's interesting how they expect her to be. And when she's the opposite of it, they're like, whoa, okay, that's, wow. But I love also what you're raising is like, she's a real person, like my mom is real. All the people in this book are real, including myself, but we're still in the world of the book, we're still a character. And so I actually have to remind myself, she's my hero, obviously, but I have to give her ethical complexity, and I also have to talk about the times where she was exhausted and angry and difficult. And so that's a challenge to make sure that we are characters, that everybody is flawed. And so that that was hard though. I didn't want to think about my mom that way, but I had to write her that way too. Question?
How does a poem typically come to you?
How does a poem typically come to me? It's a great question. I'm a huge notator of all the things that I see and do, and sometimes it's just like, you know, I'll get on my phone, I can picture something. I have what I call the compost pile. It's a Word document, it's probably 150 pages by now of random notes and thoughts and things that I write in my physical notebook, my notes app on my phone, or anything. And every week I take all my random notes and slips of paper and notes app and I put it into the compost bin on my Word doc. And then when I want to write a poem, how I do it every time is that I reach into the compost, I pull out 5 completely random lines that are thoughts I had, put them on the page, and I try to write through them. What happens is that most of them go away, and then the poem comes from an image that leads me to actually what's on my mind, like hard moment. I do not like writing from a blank page. It causes me deep anxiety, scary, blinking cursor, empty, like, you know, sheet of paper. I take notes all the time, and so I might as well use it. So I write by composting, basically. And sometimes, if Baby explains the eggs, I throw some of my lines back into the compost and reuse my own lines, because that's causes like accidental cohesion in the book, apparently. Like you're like, oh, split the egg. It's because I probably threw that egg white back in there. So I highly recommend trying it if you ever write block kind of feeling or something like that. You take notes all the time, like just put it in one place. It's like if you wrote a note to yourself like from 3 months ago, how wonderful to see it in your compost and use it then. You know, so that's how I write poetry. Wow. Yeah. I don't think it's usual, but I find it less stressful, to be honest, than staring and be like, what am I gonna write about? You can write about anything, and it will always turn into trust that the poem knows what it's going to do, which is to write about what's really in your heart and mind at that moment. Even if you write about like a squirrel, it will literally somehow be about my mother for some reason, you know. But yeah, thank you for that question.
So, you told us that you're a public library fan and you read voraciously as a kid and you hid in the coat rack, which I love that, that's amazing. And then you skipped parties because you're doing your homework. So when did you come to writing? What's the story behind when you started? What did you start writing? How old were you? And what kinds of things did you write?
Yeah, that's a great, yeah, there's something about like very long, and I always knew from a very young age I wanted to write, and part of that was the library and wanting to change the ending of stories and to create my own characters. It was always in me, but I'm gonna first my family to graduate high school, and go to college, etc. And so to be honest, I didn't think I could be an author. I didn't think it was terrifying to think like, what, me? Like, I'm the one person in my family to go to college and do all that stuff. I should probably do something like be a doctor or something useful. Like, I know in my mind, because at me at the time being like poet, like, you know. But it turns out I was terrible at science and math. And like, I just was like, I've always come back to this, and I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna take a risk, I'm gonna do it. And so I actually began as a fiction writer.
Not a lot of people know this, but I have my roots in fiction and short stories. And an amazing advisor when I was in college, Matt Johnson, who still is an advisor of mine and we are friends. And he told me, he was like, Jane, you have a knack for writing like dialogue, characters, like scene, emotional weight. What's up with your plot? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, nothing happens. Like, can you do something? Make anything happen. And I was like, I gave that. And he was like, what do you mean you can't? And I was like, I'm sorry, Matt. I think I put it down. He's trying with the plot. Then I discovered poetry. And I was like, no plot. Oh, cool. Still his narrative, fragments of narrative, images, scene, character, like, like people. I was so romantic in poetry. I was like, I don't need a plot. I can just do what I do, say in language. And I never went back from fiction. I just went from poetry and I did my MFA in poetry and I'm coming slowly back to prose with nonfiction. And Matt Johnson, my advisor who actually teaches at the University of Oregon, came to do a reading with me in Portland at Powell. And he basically was like, are you coming back to fiction? He asked me this every time. And I said, yes. And I am. I'm trying to write short stories now, so I'm kind of going full circle. But that's my journey as a writer in the short, version that I couldn't avoid it. And I had to take a big leap of faith. And I think my mom was very proud of me, but it was terrifying. It was terrifying to be like, I guess I'll be a writer, and be the first in my family to go to college and do all that. It was a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility, but I would have changed it for the world. I'm so glad that I took this risk because I'd be probably sad otherwise. Like this is the brightest of love of my life, and I think a lot of you know how that feels to love what you do.
Gotta ask the natural follow-up question, which is, when you discover poetry, what poetry did you discover? What was like the first poets that like really turned you on to poetry?
Great question. I gotta give a shout out to back to Jersey, the Dodge Poetry Festival, which is an incredible poetry festival in New Jersey because one day it's high school day, and so they bring in a bunch of high schoolers from all these New Jersey schools, and they go to see all these incredible poets read. I've never really known much about poetry, and we never did a poetry unit, and so my teacher brought me to Dodge Poetry Festival. I was like 16, 17, and Leon Lee was the first poet I ever saw read, and he was Asian American, and I saw him and I was like, what is that? Like I was like mesmerized by him reading. And I got to meet him afterwards. I have a deeply awkward photo of me as a teenager with him. And then I didn't really read much poetry since then, but I remember distinctly he was one of the first poets I read, and I read Rose and some of his early books too stayed with me. And then when I went to college, eventually after a lot of fiction, I did discover some of my poets that I still are influential to me today. It's definitely Still Clifton. I've always loved Still Clifton. In return for her poems, I read her poems probably 10 times, 20 times, and I still find something new in each poem that I read of hers. And Emma Dickinson, I was like obsessed with just like her weirdness and trying to figure out. She wrote in a letter to Higginson, one of her editors, like when she tries to basically organize, I'm trying to paraphrase, she says, my little force explodes. She called herself a wayward writer. Like she says that when she tried to write in meter, tried to write in style and every kind of writing it, she just couldn't. Like she was just kind of like this, a bit of her own style, her own mess. And I was attracted to poets that were like that had their own style. And so I feel like I definitely think at the end of the day, you're gonna ask me to go to an island or something with like 2 books of poems. It's Emily Dickinson, it's with Still Clifton, like they're collected. They will probably keep me alive on this island for a chunk of time emotionally, at least. But yeah, those are my kind of favorite poems. Yeah.
And, growing up, a couple of segments of poetry, elementary, middle school. Absolutely ruined me. So I made poetry forever. As part of the here tonight, I saw some poetry up here in the corner, they had poets meeting. Months ago, I had original poetry. Hey, this is good. I like it. Bottom fight, we like to see.
Love that. I also love too that I also, there's a one Marianne Moore line that begins one of her poems called Poetry. I too dislike it. And there's just something kind of funny that's like, yeah, there's so much, that I just never, succeed or felt so like I had to do an assignment, like I had to write like a villanelle, or I had to do this particular form. And I should be clear, I love formal poetry, but I think that, you know, when you actually start with the heart and then find a form that fits the heart, that's where it becomes magical for me. And so anyone can write poetry. I think about how poet Audre Lorde talks about how poetry is the most economical art form because you don't need to buy paint, you don't need to buy canvas, you can just write a poem back of a receipt. And that's so special to me, like the power of poetry, because like I think I mentioned this in our workshop, everybody's a storyteller. You know, you can be a poet because everyone's a storyteller. And so that's how we find the love of poetry. It's still story. Thank you for sharing that, and thanks for coming to listen to poetry. Yeah, and I think it's okay if I read another poem. Now I feel like, you know, like there's something kind of like a nice thing. Okay, let me see if I can find this one poem. Most poets have poems called Ars Poetica, which is a poem about writing poetry. And I was in Wyoming once, and I was on a writing residency. And at a writing residency, it's like you get a whole month to write poetry. And there's a chef, like, that feeds you. With what? It was like a true honor. But guess what? When I was in Wyoming, nothing was happening. I just told you about the compost pile and everything. And I was like frustrated with myself. I would write my compost late. It wasn't the poem I wanted. I was frustrated. I was like, this isn't it. And then I looked out my window and I saw a bobcat eating a mouse. Now that's a poem. So this is called The Waiting, and it's about poetry, or it's about wanting to write a poem or how to write a poem. The Waiting. I waited for something to arrive. I didn't know what. Something glued, something sun knocked. I placed my poems up, little pads of butter expecting. All day, nothing. Longer than that. My hair grew, fell out, grew. Outside my window, I felt the flick of a tail in the September wind. A bobcat sauntered across the grass before me, the black tip of its tail, a pencil I'd like to sharpen. I immediately hushed, crouched, became a crumpled shock of joy to see something this wild, not myself. I turned to look at me, its body muscular in the turning. In its mouth was the tail of a mouse, drained of blood, dangling diorama of death. Sharp eyes looking at me, and then not. Its lack of fear, its slow stroll across the stream's bridge, fur lacerating its teeth. Sometimes, what comes to us, we never call for. How long had I been crouched like that? I stood up, blood rushed trumpeting. My arms wrapped themselves around myself, lifted. It was as if a bank vault had opened, and I was just standing there, stealing nothing. Anyway, so I was there for literally 3 weeks and I didn't write like anything. And I was like, oh my god, this bobcat's like staring at me. And I wrote this, and it was about writing poetry. It was like
feeling it wasn't about waiting, I was waiting for some inspiration. No, it's like right in front of you, life. Okay, so there's that poem. I think I want to read one more. And this one actually is an old one, so the waiting is a little bit of a new one. I'm going backwards in time for my first book. And I think that every poet has the poems that they keep referring to is that they're kind of like comfort food, I guess. Like, and there is one poem in here which is called After Preparing the Altar, the Ghost Feast Beautifully, but it's a long poem, and I think I would fall over it if I try to read that one. But this one is one I always hold close to me, and it is a persona poem, so it is my mother's voice. And in my first book, Overport, I write in my mother's voice from different years of her life. So 24, 30, 49, and that kind of thing. And I tried to imagine what her life was like in that year. So this is her at 24, and you already heard me say she had me at 20. So she was a young mom, had 2 kids, and she was arranged to marry my father, who was a stranger. And my father's not in my life, and estranged from him, and so kind of get a sense of their marriage in this poem. And I just thought of her being so lonely. Her family wasn't in the States yet, and so she just missed her own parents. 24. Salt can dissolve more, such is the law. Antlers shine, bone clean in our yard. Buzzers at the bus stop count out children. We have 2 children. To see how we truly behave, we must lie side by side and let anger slide. The stoop flat air would hold the neck to the neck. These nights, crickets rave at the door. Lamb's ear sprouts electricity softening the yard. Our daughter covers her mouth, small as a heart. Cloud and cough, I couldn't even see my hands in the morning. The sky breaks open, how break my roots from you. Overpour of regret, there's too much blood in the cow to comprehend. At 20, I had caution and called it Jane. To want all that's yours, I married you, marred you, missed your kill and kissed the blood. A continent away, hay pours into a field. Each time my father waves across the shore, I dissolve one part more. And that poem is meaningful to me because I just can imagine my mom missing her father, who she's very close with, and he's no longer in this world right now, he's passed. And just imagine him waiting from New Jersey and him waiting from China, and just like so bad we wanted to be close to him. And that, she had 2 young moms who just really dismissed her own parents. So yeah, poetry is powerful. I guess that's all I did today. Thank you so much for being here. I don't know if there's one last question or anything like that, but I really appreciate you being here. It's again, it's a pleasure to be here at the public library in Longview, and feel a really kind generosity from you all. So I'm really grateful.
Thank you.
If any of you want to get email reminders about future Northwest Voices, other events, that email sign up. So sign up, I'll email.